Hello, everyone. Good morning, good afternoon, as per your respective time zone. On behalf of entire Evosys Managed Services team, we would like to welcome you all to 22A HR Help Desk and ORC Advisory Webinar session. This important session is to keep you fully synchronized with the new features and functionalities as a part of this quarterly release, which Oracle provides. My name is Hardik Patel, and I'm an operations manager here at Evosys Managed Services team. Today, I'm your host for this session, and I'm glad to introduce my colleague Adib Gandhi, who's part of our vast HCM team at Evosys. Today, he'll take us through all the HR Help Desk and ORC updates for 22A quarter release. Today's session is planned for around 45 to 60 minutes, and we'll also make sure that we also leave some time to answer all your questions you may have. Meanwhile, during the session, if you have any questions, you can do ask us through chat and question panel as well. Before we move to today's agenda, let's have a quick look at the important disclaimer. As we all noticed, that Oracle notified some customers about 22 upgrade happening along with 22B in the month of May. So some customers are requested to check the respective notifications accordingly. However, this webinar is mainly to equip you with the latest updates on 22A. We would like to convey you our approach towards Oracle updates in a very simpler method. We'll be taking you through vital analysis for the 22A updates done by our experts, which will help you incorporating new features and updates easily into your system. We will also sync you on any bugs or known issues if there are any. And then we'll move to the closing note. As we explained earlier, if you do have any questions, please do ask through chat and question panel, and our panel members will be more than happy to answer them. This is to give you a glimpse on how we have crafted the structure of this session, the list of new features coming into 22A, detailing on features, so you get a brief understanding on what new features are all about. Next one is what are business benefits, an important takeaway for you as a decision maker. There are 4 components wherein we have done in-depth analysis of features which we are going to present to you today. The first one is impact level analysis, which demonstrates the impact on the end user. If it's a low impact, then regression testing can be avoided or not. If it's a high impact, then we need to offer regression testing. Second one, which is we all are aware that there are some features which are by default auto-enabled by Oracle, and there are some which we need to opt for. The third one highlights the nature of each feature. There would be certain configuration which may be required, and some can be used without any changes. And the last one, which is a quick win. This term we use to simply convey that what is ready to use by investing minimum amount of time and what requires significant amount of time and efforts to make use of this feature. Before I hand it over to my colleague to start today's session, on a quick poll, we would like to note that which industry does your organization belongs to. On your screen, if you can help us with a quick poll. This would help us writing more fruitful content going forward on our webinars. So thank you everyone for the poll. We'll be closing the poll in next 10 seconds, and we'll begin today's session. Thank you for your inputs. And now I'll be handing over to my colleague Adib, and he'll take you through today's session. Unmute yourself, and stage is all yours, Adib. Thank you.
Thank you, Hardik, for such a wonderful introduction. So my name is Adib, and today I'll be taking you through the new features for HR Help Desk and ORC in 22A. So let us begin with the analysis. So as per the analysis, we have identified that there are 21 new features in HR Help Desk and ORC, out of which we have classified 14 features as default while we have classified 6 features which requires minimal enablement but are still quick wins, and one feature we have classified as which requires more configuration and more enablement, and also some advanced steps in configuration. So we have broadly classified the features into 4 categories. The first category we say is as quick win default with no configuration. So here it is by default available as soon as your instance will go into 22A. The features will be readily available and there is no requirement for you to enable anything or configure. It is ready to use. The second category that we have classified as quick wins default with configuration. So here we are saying that some features are can be enabled with minimal configuration. The third category is quick wins opt-ins. So here we are saying that some features which requires minimal enablement and they are ready to use. So we are still classifying these features as quick wins. And the rest features, so these are features which requires more configuration and more enablement. And also there are some advanced tips and consideration that you should keep in order to enable this feature. So let us move to our first category, which is quick wins default with no configuration. So we have our first feature, which is batch collect feedback action. So if you are aware that the after once the interview is scheduled and the interview is taken by the interviewers, after that point of time, the recruiting team requires or request the respondents to provide the feedback. So before this release, what they were doing is the recruiting team was going on an individual candidate and they were selecting the collect feedback action and sending it to the respondents, which are none other than the interviewers. So in this release, Oracle has introduced and come up with a feature where you can select multiple candidates at the same time and you can request for their feedbacks to the respondents or the interviewers. So this is a very good feature. It will save time for the recruiters and it will also save some manual clicks, which the recruiter team used to do it before. So there is a simple logic behind this. So if you are selecting 5 or less job applications, the collect feedback action would be performed in the real time. And if you are selecting more than 5 job application, the action will be performed asynchronously and it will be processed as soon as as possible. And also you will get notified once the process gets completed. And the interesting part is even if if there are some application which are skipping or failing for any reason, you will be able to view which are those application and then you can perform the needed action manually. So this is a very good feature and it is a quick win. Moving on to our next feature is purging process internal recruiting data. So we have internal candidates applying for a job and at times it happens that they have applied for a lot for a many jobs and these data are no longer required by the organization. So in order to optimize the performance, optimize the application performance, there is a process which we can run and we can remove those data for the internal candidates in order to make sure that we are not storing their data for a longer period and we are utilizing the system to the peak. So normally we recommend that this process should be run on a non-working day. That is, you can, for example, you can run it on every Saturday 10 p.m. where no one will be using the system and this process would be running at the back end and you will have a good application performance once you are performing this at a regular intervals. The next feature is about honoring individual compensation allocation in job offers when multiple entries aren't allowed. So this was a problem since the previous release. So what was happening is when the internal candidate were applying to a job requisition and they were at the offer stage and when the recruiting team were trying to allocate some individual compensation plan to the offer and then they when they were processing it to the HR phase, during that time if the internal candidate already had an individual compensation plan associated to the current alignment assignment, and if the individual compensation plan and the current assignment plan was the same, then there was an error coming up and it was stating that there couldn't be multiple entries for the same employee uh, at a given period. So now, so this was creating an issue for the recruiting team, and they need to do some manual intervention. Either they need to go to the assignment and remove the individual compensation plan from their current assignment, and then they were assigning a new job offer to that internal candidate. So in this release, this won't happen. So the copy will now happen. So if you are assigning an individual compensation plan to the internal candidate at the offer level, and even though the same plan is residing in the employee's current assignment, so it will still allow you to process that job offer, and it will be acting in a very synchronized manner. So as you can see that there could be like three scenarios that could happen if the existing plan is already there in the current assignment. So let's say if there is an existing plan in the worker's assignment, so if you are aligning the same individual compensation plan at the offer state, then the end date of the current assignment's individual plan will be set one day before the start date of the new uh, individual plan. If it is in future, then the day the employee starts working on that new assignment, that day would be considered as that individual compensation plan start date, and the current assignment start date would be set one day before that date. And if it happens in the rare case that both the individual compensation plan are starting on the same day, then the system would give an warning stating that the plan dates are same, and at that point of time, uh, manual intervention is required. Either you remove the compensation plan from the assignment and then proceed it. So this will have a great business benefit because this feature will enhance the data accuracy, and it will re- minimize the manual intervention that was required before. Moving on to our next feature is add skills to job requisition using HCM data loader. So during the previous releases, we have seen that there are a skill there is a skills field located on the job requisition page where you can add skills based on the requirement to the job requisition, and it can be seen by the external candidates. So now in every organization, if we are trying to use this feature, then there might be some existing job requisition which requires an update which requires a skill update. You need to put in some skills in the existing job requisition. So for that reason, this is a very good feature where you can use HCM data loader and update the skills to the existing job requisition. So this is providing an alternate option. You can definitely go into the job requisition and update it manually, but this is a good feature if you want to avoid that. The next feature is about Oracle Digital Assistant, which is recruiting skills enhancement. So on the candidate page, now there will be a new intent coming up, which is like show my upcoming interviews, where the candidate, if the candidate clicks on this show my upcoming interviews, they will have all the details related to interviews displayed on this chat panel. So previously this wasn't there, and this is an a new feature in 22A. Although this requires so this is an existing feature. So if you already have enabled the Oracle, if you have already set up your ODA, then this feature is by default available to those organizations. So this feature will help the external candidate to view the interview details, and also it will help the internal candidate to find the jobs, and it would be much easier and in a faster manner. The next feature is about linking existing job requisition to a pipeline job requisition using HCM data loader. So again, this is a very common requirement that some organization, that most of the organization are having, that there is a requirement to link an pipeline job requisition, or to link existing job requisition to a pipeline job requisition. And again, in this release, we have that option where we can use HCM data loader and perform the transactions, perform this operation. Although there are certain criteria which are like predefined criteria that should be fulfilled before using this HCM data loader. So here are some, which is it should be a standard job requisition that shouldn't be linked to an existing pipeline, linked to a pipeline requisition. It should be active. It should have no prospect or job application. It shouldn't be scheduled to be posted, and it should have no recruiting agent added to it. So these are some criteria that should be fulfilled in order to use this feature. So again, this is providing a good option without we doing it manually from the user interface. The next feature is related to the reporting area, which is opportunity marketplace subject area would now have seeker preferences. So these are different domains that are introduced in 21A, where you can have this seeker alert, activator, indicator. These are the fields that are introduced in this release. So using this feature, the recruiting users would be able to know the interest of various job and also the geek seekers. This will be a very helpful feature in terms of knowing the areas of interest. Moving to our next category, which is quick wins default with configuration. So here the first feature is define scope of candidate selection processes being exported. So as we are aware that now we can export candidate selection process from one instance and then import it to another instance. So in the same direction, now what we can do is we can specify, or like we can point out which specific candidate selection process we want to export from an instance. Instead of exporting all the candidate selection process and then importing it to another instance, we can now and define scope of that uh, specific candidate selection process that we want to export. And then on the other end, we can only import that specific candidate selection process to other instance. So this, defining the scope and pointing out to the exact area makes the process very easier, and it will be also easier at the other end when you are trying to import it to another environment. The next feature is about tagging candidates using predefined labels. So as we all are aware that during recruitment or during analysis of the candidate, we have some of the tags which we want to give to the candidate. So for example, you have identified some of the one of the candidate as the finance expert, so you need to put a label to it, so that in future if some requirements comes which is very related to the finance module, you can align that candidate to that requisition. So these labels are introduced and you can use this labels. Recruiter teams and hiring teams can use this label for analyzing the candidate and using it for future references. The next feature is social sharing for external career sites. So when we are setting a career site, now we have the option where we can improve or we can enhance the feature of sharing a job application to other sites. So we have a field where it says like image URL, and here you need to put a common URL and of the image. So what happens is when you will share it to another site, this image will be populated along with the job application. So it gives a better feeling to the candidate while applying to a job, and it will be enhancing the sharing feature on social media or any other posting job recruiting websites. The next feature is LinkedIn embedded search. So as you are aware that we can search the candidate in in like in the same screen where we can create a job requisition. So when we are searching for the candidate, you have now an embedded option where it says like search in LinkedIn recruiter, as you can see on the as per the screenshot. So what happens is based on the keyword that you have searched, you get the results for in the like in Oracle instance. And also you can use this feature search in LinkedIn Recruiter. So it will redirect you to the LinkedIn website. And if you are already logged in using, if you're already logged in into LinkedIn, then automatically that page would appear based on the search keywords that you have put in on this page. And this feature is also dependent. So if you have already enabled LinkedIn Recruiter System Connect on your instance, then only you will be able to use this feature. So this is normally synchronizing the LinkedIn search with Oracle search. So it is a good feature where recruiting team previously used to search on LinkedIn as well as on this Oracle instance. So now they have this one screen from Oracle instance. They can directly go to LinkedIn if required. The next feature is personalized notification preferences for custom objects. So now users have the privilege to personalize notification that are triggered against the custom object. So now you can define like what are your preferences and which channels are your preferred ones. So there are multiple channels in HR help desk, and out of them you can now choose your preferences that only a specific channel would be allowed to send notifications, and you can disable the rest of the channels. The next feature is about driving service request milestone using additional covered levels. So now you can derive the milestone for a specific location. You can also derive it for a product group or an asset, and you can create due date based on that. So this feature is very good for companies who have a more flexible more flexible terms for contract coverage. So they can now easily set up the requirement in the instance based on certain criteria that they have. The next feature is about adding links to third-party application from service request message. So now you can put in links to third party in the service request message area, and the user can easily click on that link, and then they can go to the third party applications from that specific link that the user has mentioned in the service request. So again, giving flexibility to the user to navigate to other application using a simple link. Moving on to our third category, which is quick wins opt-ins. So the first feature is feedback respondents added to hiring team. So as we saw a feature earlier where the recruiting team were sending feedback requests to the respondents, which is none other than the interviewers. So normally the system, as per the design, the system was adding that respondents as to the requisition as collaborators so that they can access the details of the candidate as well as they can see the job requisition detail. But now it is but now you can restrict that based on the simple profile option. So you need to enable this now. So by default this profile option is enabled, but if you want that, you need to secure your requisition, or your organization have certain policies, then you can disable this feature. So that the feedback respondents would not be added as a collaborator in the job requisition and your data would be secured. So this can now be achievable. The next feature is improved skill usage for job requisition. So as you can see, this is the job requisition area where you can put in programming skills and soft skills. So in 21D, skills that were added to the job requisition were only visible to the external candidate. But now in this release, even the internal candidates would be able to see the programming skills or the whichever skills the recruiting team has added to a job requisition. And the greater advantage is now the agencies would also be able to see the skills so that they can send the relevant candidates matching the like which are exactly matching the skills that are mentioned in the job requisition. So this will provide a clear visibility to all the candidates, like especially external, internal, and agencies. All will have a clear visibility about the job requisition and the exact skills that are to be that are required for that specific job. The next feature is copy external job offers. Again, a very good feature. So now there are at times similar requirements that there are five candidates who are having the same offer as you have given to one candidate. So now using this action, there is an action which says copy offer. So based on this, you can copy one candidate's offer and then you can select multiple candidates so that the same offer would be applied to multiple candidates at the same time. So again, a very good feature which helps the recruiting team to perform perform the actions in a much easier manner. So before they used to spend like a lot of time going at times there are situations where there are like more than 10 candidates which are supposed to be hired in the current week or in the next week. So in that situation, this feature would be very helpful where they will just select the number of candidates and they will copy the offer of one candidate to the two other ones. The next feature is streamlining internal candidate processing. So using this feature is uh, about the internal candidate. So when the internal candidate accepts the offer, after that the recruiter or the recruiting team needs to go into the system and then they need to move it to the HR phase, and then it they have again a certain action to be performed. So if they move to the HR phase, then they have that, like if they want to add the assignment or if they want to change their proposed date. So these action are performed once you move the candidate to the HR stage. So now in this release, you have that option where you can select quick process offer, and this will immediately create a new assignment or whatever is the new requirement that an internal candidate is satisfying. That will be happening without uh, we going into the system and performing those. So minimal, or I can say no, manual processing is required by human resource specialist once the candidate is converted, like once the candidate is moved to the HR phase. So this is a very good feature, and this using this process, the HR specialists be would easily or would quickly move the internal candidates into the new assignments. The next feature is recommendation strength on the AI features. So when the hiring team would be viewing the strength of the individual candidates at that point of time, this is a user interface that they will be seeing. So they will be seeing a matching score relevant to the candidates, and they will see for all the candidates which are available on the screen so that they can compare between two candidates if they want to. So this is a good feature for them to understand the recommendation strength, understand the strengths of the candidates that have applied for a job. The next feature is classifying service request messages. So now there is a in this release we have that space where we can use the message subtype field and then classify the service request, so that this is a good feature in terms of the agent also knowing in which area they are supposed to work or in which area they're looking for. So by looking at the message subtype field, they can easily identify which category does this SR fall into. As you can see, the business benefits, service request agents can quickly and easily filter and view message of the specific subtype. So they can use the filters if they want to solve a specific area first, they can use the filter and do that. And the last feature, which is the rest feature. So here we have a feature which is job application grid view. So normally, as you can see on the screen, we have a candidate. We are Nicholas, and we are seeing the detailed status and all this in a grid view. So it is all in a single row, and you are able to easily figure out like what are the strength of this candidate. So imagine if you are having having multiple candidates on the screen, you will be easily able to compare the candidates and select the relevant ones. So this feature is very helpful in terms of comparing the candidates. It requires enablement and configuration, although there are certain tips that you should be taking care about while enabling this feature. So that's all. I think we have covered all the features. Over to you, Hardik.
So thank you so much, Ari, for the wonderful detailed insights. Before we move to the Q&A, we would quickly like to note down your area of interest in order to organize future webinar with more value-based content. So here's the poll to let us know your area of interest, please. Whether it's technology innovation, managed services, value-based analytics, or cloud transformation. If you have any questions on any of these, you can also reach out to dedicated project managers at Evosys. Thank you. And let's check the Q&A part. If I can see any questions in line. We do not have any questions as of now. If you have any question, do write to us right now, or you can also reach out to us. Reach out to project manager, and if you need a one-to-one connect or anything specific, we can arrange the same. And as of now, we don't see any questions. And before you leave us, we'd like to tell you that we'll be sending you the recording of this session along with the test scripts and the presentation PDF over your email. And in fact, it has been on the way yesterday itself, and you can follow the same link, and the future all the webinars will be loaded on the same web page. And we have upcoming webinars, as you can see on the screen, a supply chain PPM dedicated finance, which is coming up today only, and the workforce management and global payroll is also there. So if any of your team member wants to register, we're more than happy to welcome them. And the last thing, before you leave us, we would like you to rate us on how we did today. With your help, we can definitely improve. So please rate your overall experience on today's session, please. With this, we would like to also thank you for giving your important time in today's session. Thank you, everyone, for the poll. And once again, thanks, everyone, for the precious time. Thank you.